Welcome to The Game. This is the show where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics. We're in the days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're going to take a closer look at his legacy, what it means for the future of the conservative movement, the impact that he had on young people. We're also going to dive into the present cultural question: what's driving so many young men towards isolation, anger, and even political violence? Then we'll turn to the future of the conservative movement itself, how it moves forward in the wake of the loss of one of its most prominent leaders. And finally, a new poll is showing that Latino voters might be souring a bit with Donald Trump. How will Republicans, how will this administration begin to pivot or begin to make the case to Latinos again? Joining me today to talk these various topics, we have Driana Sixto with Turning Point USA Action. She's also the host of Claro y Directo. Also joining us here today is Cesar Grajales. He is the Public Affairs Director at the Libre Initiative. He is also a host at the 10 a.m. hour on La Poderosa. I want to thank both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
All right. This is, I think, an important topic when we talk about the legacy of Charlie Kirk and when we talk about the days after the assassination. One of the stats coming out of this is that approximately 32,000 people have signed a petition to bring Turning Point USA to their college. So while, maybe his voice, Charlie, was silenced because he was murdered, but his voice and impact will continue. Dran, I want to begin with you. You know Charlie. You knew Charlie personally. You worked for several years side by side and still work with Turning Point USA Action. You kind of have a behind-the-scenes look at the operation there. Tell us, how did Charlie really inspire the movement from within the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with Turning Point USA back in 2016, in the summer of 2016. That's the 501c3. Right now, I work for Turning Point Action, which is the 501c4. And the 501c3, the difference is it's a nonprofit, and it's not outwardly political, as in, you can't endorse candidates, you can't endorse parties, but you still can promote ideas. You can promote conservative ideas and conservative values. That is definitely not partisan. And Turning Point USA just spread like wildfire across college campuses and then high school campuses nationwide because there was a vacuum. There was just no space for conservative political discussion. In most of these places, it was a left-wing ideological bubble where professors, which in their majority leaned left, were the ones expressing their political views, and students didn't have a place where they could express their own or have those ideas challenged. And Charlie decided to venture into the places that mattered most, into those bubbles, and he popped those bubbles with his presence there. Going on college campuses, himself giving these events, doing these college tours. I am very blessed to have witnessed what used to be college tours with 300, 400 students in attendance to it being thousands. I mean, they got so big that they couldn't find auditoriums or anymore to host these events at, and that's why he went outside and started doing these Prove Me Wrongs, and had thousands of students surrounding him and listening to the conversation and dialogue and discussion. Charlie, I think the reason why he was so successful is he was truly authentic. He believed in what he believed in, truly, and preached it. And so that is a lot more convincing because he had those convictions. He believed in God fervently. He believed in family values. He believed in love of country. He believed in love of your fellow American and fellow citizen, even if they disagreed with your personal views and political views. At his events, at his Prove Me Wrong events, he would make sure to allow people with opposing views to come to the front and debate him and ask questions. Exactly. And he did so with love. I think that is the theme that I have noticed here, and it's a battle between love and hate, right? The politics of love of Charlie were keeping this country safe because we love the people here, right? You can apply this to just about anything he believed in. Why do we want closed borders? It's because we love the people that are here and we want to keep them safe. The same way that if we close the doors to our house at night, it's because we love the people inside, not because we hate anybody on the outside, right? All of his politics and all of his policies that he promoted stemmed from a place of love, and he treated people with differing opinions with kindness as well. And I think that's something that can be seen from the videos, hundreds and probably thousands of videos online right now. And it's truly inspiring to see so many people that from this tragedy now want to get involved and want to continue his legacy. In the 10 years that I've been with both organizations, either organization, we've never seen this kind of interest of getting involved in the movement. And we're going to make sure that inspiration doesn't die down and that passion is put to work.
Yeah, and that it continues. Something that's sort of interesting to look is the reaction of individuals. We've mentioned the 32,000 people who have signed the petition, but says that also there's just a long list of politicians, but also people outside of the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel. I saw a gathering in South Korea of conservatives. There's people of faith. There's people in politics. There's young people just with interest. The reaction after his assassination, in stark contrast to other sort of assassinations or problems, was one of people praying, was one of people coming together, visuals. It was peaceful. There was no burning of buildings or looting of businesses or burning of cars. It was really kind of a coming together of people who admire him. There's also a lot of folks who maybe disagreed with him, but said, hey, he gave us a platform. He allowed us to have this debate. To you, what stands out the most after the reaction of the country, the reaction of people sort of coming together after this tragic event?
I think it is important to recognize that the movement that he built, it was not only for the United States. I think it crossed borders. People is really interested in continue taking the torch of freedom across the different countries and cities that people is living in, and support what Charlie Kirk built. I think the shooting and the killing of Charlie Kirk, I think it was also an attempt to assassination of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And people notice that across the world. And people who really believe on freedom of speech, regardless of the political spectrum you might find yourself, they reject that. And the reason I believe people are either marching or sending messages of support to Kirk's family and the United States, out of the United States, is because they recognize that that's really dangerous for any society to kill freedom of speech. You can dissent with respect, had respectful debates, understand differences in societies, but silence a voice is dangerous. I'm going to make a connection also to what happened in Colombia recently with the killing of Senador Miguel Uribe. And that...
A conservative figure as
well? A conservative figure, yes.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of pattern around the world. They're trying to silence the conservative voices. But with the Charlie Kirk assassination, people who really appreciate freedom of speech, and they wanna and they understand that is, again, as I mentioned before, it goes beyond party lines. It was a kind of a really big red flag, and that we need to stand up and support our friends in United States, Charlie Kirk's family, and whoever loves freedom of speech. So I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, I think
out of this strategy.
That's key. I think you're spot on it wasn't just an assassination targeted to him specifically, but it's the values that he stood for. And one of the biggest one is freedom of speech. I think Charlie Kirk really brought public discourse to the town square, right? Again, he was. There's the famous town halls with politicians, right? But those town halls, it always sort of moderated some way, right? I think sometimes even politicians, if we're being honest, kind of shy away from the full debate.
Let me stop you there, my friend, and let me you just use a term which is important. You said politicians. Charlie Kirk was a civilian. He was exercising the freedom of speech that all of us should be exercising without any fear. Politicians maybe had an agenda because they represent a specific district and area, but in his case, he was just representing beliefs that he really believed in that in those talking points and those point of views. I'm sorry, not talking points, point of views and values, and that's excellent. And then there's a big difference between a politicians that maybe have a political agenda, and this is just pure civic engagement at the college level that were supposed to be encourage the debates and the debates of ideas. So that's the big distinction there.
Because I think he saw very early on a void when it came to the conservative movement, or even we can even call it a weakness, and it was young voter. For so many years, the left had a stronghold when it comes to college-age students, to just first-time voters, young voters, and these elections are won on the margins, but even beyond the elections, just the way the country is thinking, the future of train of thought of a nation, and that's where Turning Point, that's where Charlie Kirk came in. In your opinion, how important was that, and how impactful was that to where we are now?
Well, the reason why I jumped so quickly at getting involved and working for Turning Point USA when I first saw it on my college campus at Florida International University back in 2016 is because the messaging was completely different from any other political organization I had seen from the right. The motto back then was "Big Government Sucks."
Yeah.
There were signs created, that said "Socialism sucks," and they truly marketed these values to young people. Unfortunately, the right, it's called the Grand Old Party, and unfortunately, it was mostly older people that were leading the party. We were completely ignoring the future generations, and had Charlie not intervened with Turning Point USA, the Republican voting base could very easily die off within one generation, 2 generations. We weren't creating new conservatives. They weren't catering to young people. I think Charlie showed that by having the correct messaging, young people care and young people do get involved, and young people are competent, right? And they can be leaders. A lot of the founding fathers of this country were extremely young men. We have a very young vice president, J.D. Vance, who, by the way, Charlie Kirk was pretty much directly responsible for in being the VP pick, which is why it was so touching that JD did the Charlie Kirk show and hosted it just the other day. So that's really what set Turning Point USA apart. And now we see that these newer, younger generations are turning out more conservative than ever. And I think it has to do with the fact that we've made conservatism cool again, that family values, having a family, loving thy neighbor, respecting each gender, right, and what each one has to offer because they're different but equal in value, and really admiring each side for what they have to offer. That way we can come together instead of going to war with each other, because that's what has been propagandized by the left for so long. The left has tried to divide and conquer by so long, by everything, by gender, male versus female, feminism, which is, women against men, men against women. You don't need a family. Trying to push transgenderism upon children, telling them that they are not okay in the body that God gave them, right? Just declaring war on people's bodies, declaring war on family, declaring war upon races. They are always trying to race bait and put people up against each other instead of having us unite. And so the message that we had to offer was the complete opposite of that. It was a message of unity. It was a message of hope, because by telling somebody that you're never going to get anywhere because of the color of your skin, your nationality, the gender that you are, of course these people are going to be in despair. Of course they're going to be in a mindset of failure and anger. Our side offers hope, and it's also reality. It tells people that depending on how much work they put in, the values that they have, that the sky is the limit. So we have a message of that is a lot more positive, and I think that's why the younger generations are flocking towards that.
And Adriana, actually, I want to continue with you, but move on to our second topic, which we are looking at the future of the conservative movement. Whenever there is a leader that either retires, passes on, or in this case, was assassinated, there is a moment where the party sort of has to look at, the movement has to look at where they are going. And the interest, obviously, is there. Again, we keep referencing the petition of 32,000 people, which is impressive. So I want to ask you, what would you say is that like playbook that Turning Point had? Because it is, or has, because their model is different. Again, it was one of, and I've seen videos of you doing this. You've going to universities, you guys put a table, you put a sign that says, prove me wrong, or let's debate, or prove this is wrong. But that takes preparation. Give us a little bit of the behind the scenes of how do you guys train? Is it reading? Is it specific books? Is it, how does someone who wants to be able to actually debate and argue and persuade people within the conservative movement, what are some of those tips that you guys would share?
I think what's really important is that we do have the facts on our side, one. And I think the other thing is that we preach from a point of compassion. So when I would do these prove me wrongs, you try to understand that the other side, they are probably just, liberals with a really big heart, but they have just been lied to for so many years that the way to help the world, to help other people out, are by these left-wing policies, by pushing socialism, right? Young people are emotional, and they want to make the world a better place, and unfortunately, they've been in a bubble for very long, our educational system, that tells them the only way to do that is by promoting socialism. It's by sharing the wealth. It's by pointing out people that are wealthy to be the bad people. We want the same thing they do. We want a higher quality of life for more people. We want people to live in peace and harmony and safety. The difference is we have other policies that actually do work to get to that point. So preaching from a point of compassion is definitely one thing. Charlie, back in the day when it was a much smaller group of staffers, would do the trainings himself and would give talking points on different subjects. And then the most important tip that he gave was to make sure to keep yourself calm, to make sure your heart rate is lowered. That way you can think clearly, you can speak clearly, you can get your message across clearly instead of getting yourself all worked up.
Which is difficult. Angry. I mean, folks would come up and they would, many of the debates, unfortunately, from people coming over from the left weren't on the policy or the facts, but it was on the person. It was an attack on calling him a racist, calling him a wide range of names. I think that's very important. I think we can have debates on policy, on the merits of the ideas without attacking the individual. And Cesar, you're someone working with the Libre Initiative. You travel across the country. You attend these events. Sometimes it's speeches. Sometimes it's, I've been to some of your events where it's like kind of town hall style discussion with the community. And you're also in media, everything from Hispanic media, from Univision, Telemundo, to having your own podcast. When you think of the movement forward, what are the opportunities there? Has the conservative movement peaked and like that's it? Like the people are established on their sides? Or do you think there's still room to persuade? And what has worked for you guys in the past, and what should people again continue doing forward?
In my opinion, I think conservative leaders and us as conservative, we need to start first doing the mea culpa because we surrendered the entertainment industry the we let the left to put labels on us, really bad names and everything, and we thought that that was fine. But I think
Let me add something there. I really like your point here. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that is spot on. Conservatives allowed Hollywood and entertainment to define family.
and this, and let me tell you, this
It didn't
just
affect
that's
the
just
culture,
one.
basically.
Yeah, it was the cultural aspect.
But let me
Yeah.
tell you, that's just one industry. You mentioning just one area, which is Hollywood, but around the world, I'm talking about around the world, conservative movement around the world. We let writers to uh, to take over the language in Spanish, for instance, when they try to change words or dynamics of the conversation to make it more inclusive. That's a political angle that they're using. When they tried here in the US to redefine Latinos as Latinx, that's political. That's not because they use the term inclusive. That's BS. There's a political angle right there. And those little things, we as a conservative, we surrendered all of that because we were not paying attention. So the mea culpa, we need to first acknowledge that, to start taking control and the reign of all of those different aspects that are very important for society. Even internet now is essential because during the 2019 and the pandemic, many of the people who was challenging the methods, the science that is normal to challenge and question, were silent, and we allowed that. Years after, they went to the news and they kind of go back and say some sort of corrected that, but we have allowed to do that. So going back to the point, I think, and I'm going to go back to you, I think the future of the movement, it depends also not only on the passion that we feel for our values and ideas, but also that we have to go to and really can be in all those different aspects of the society, which is entertainment, it's science, academics, and everywhere.
And speak up when we're there. I think that's spot on because these institutions, right? College professors,
Correct.
Entertainment, media, which for the longest time, the top media outlets were only from the left. And there has been, I think, a turn in that when it comes to podcast. A lot of center-right folks have stepped up, everyone from Charlie Kirk to Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, a long list of folks value entertainment.
And we shouldn't be
I think
afraid.
I think that's the development of technology, AI, podcast, right? The fact that we're moving away from mainstream media. We didn't have these opportunities before, so I wouldn't put too much blame on ourselves. When there was only just a handful of channels that truly we could get our information from, and they had one resounding message, and most of this message was left-leaning and it was propaganda. But that's not the case anymore, right? That has changed. So now that we do have these new platforms, now that we won't get banned on X, which used to be Twitter, for speaking the truth, because that was the problem back then. We couldn't speak out because you knew that there were certain things you would say, and that's it. You would just be deplatformed. So you just could not speak afterwards. Now that that has been a lot more loosened up, now that we have platforms like X where we can speak a lot more freely, now it is our opportunity, and now it is on us to truly speak out and speak the truth. Even other platforms like Instagram, TikTok, all of those are being a lot less restrictive because, let's be honest, in the previous administration, which was running almost like a mini dictatorship, that administration was coercing and threatening these social media outlets so that they would censor information and that we couldn't get the truth out there. So it really wasn't our fault. But what I will say is that now we also should hold outlets accountable for spreading lies, propaganda, and defamation.
And I'm going to
Because
add something else on top
Yeah.
of that, is
Yeah.
that we as a citizens and you, if you or a conservative, don't feel afraid to say it, because for a long time people was like, "I'm conservative," but I don't say it because in my work or my family.
Yeah.
No, say it out loud. That's normal. It's your point of view. It's their values that you have.
It's become cool
And-
again,
yeah.
like Driana was saying.
And my personal opinion is that outlets that now share defamatory statements need to be held accountable, because I understand that certain people can be radicalized because they truly think that, let's say, Charlie Kirk was a racist or a homophobe. You have, I mean, the other day, somebody like Stephen King, a renowned author, of horror stories, he tweeted out that Charlie Kirk supported the stoning of gays, which is an abject lie. And of course, he retracted that statement once he was called out on it. But how many
Sorry.
people saw that and they knew Stephen King to be a reputable source, right? And then thought to themselves, "Oh my God, Charlie's a horrible person." Of course, and anybody that says that gay people should be stoned to death should be titled a bad person, but that is not the case. So we're having all of these people being radicalized by fake news. And so this fake news needs to be held accountable, not just anymore oops, my bad, I'll do a little edit, I'll
Accountability behind
retract
it.
it. Yeah, we need to sue. They need to sue. And that's what the Trump administration has been doing to a lot of these outlets. They have been suing for defamatory statements, and I think that the right needs to continue to do that, just so that they learn their lesson, because sometimes the only way people learn their lesson is when it hurts their pocket.
That's a big part of it. I do this conversation on sort of the radicalization through media, also through social media, is a great segue to our next topic. We're gonna be looking at what's driving a lot of young men into isolation, possibly into anger, and sometimes into violence. It's I think one of the biggest questions right now facing our culture. There's a lot of stats out there on how young men, I would say young folks kind of in general, but young men specifically, are diving into these digital platforms. That's sort of where they're building friendship, where they're building relationship. It's not the sort of back in the day where folks used to go outside, play basketball, ride the bikes, and sort of have community. And there is an impact when that happens in a young person, and it can drive them, evidence has shown, into bad habits, and also into, again, what I mentioned, either isolation or anger. I want to have this conversation because unfortunately people have acted on this anger. It has led to violence. It has led to a generation that's not looking either to get married or to have kids, to be involved in the community the way they used to be. Cesar, I do want to start with you. I mean, in your opinion, what's the importance, or who should be starting this conversation? Is it churches? Is it politicians? Is it families? Is it all of the above? How do we have a real conversation on the impact that social media can have? I think, not to dig too deep into this, but a lot of people just now want to be what they see on social media. They see someone who has a nice car, a nice house, who's traveling, and many times it's a rented car. It's not the house that they're in. Or even on the scope of politics, the algorithm, if you're someone who likes things from the left, will drive you deeper into a point of view that you like. It's the ecosystem that we talk. Same if it's someone on the right. In your opinion, what are the conversations that we should be having as a society on this topic?
I'll start by saying that I'm not a sociologist, but from my point of view and my experience and what I believe is happening is that lack of strong families. I think at the family, mom and dad, and having a strong faith in that family, God, is needed for those young kids to grow up as good human beings. I don't think social media is the problem, but I think social media have helped to the process of some folks to radicalize. And what you just said, what you just mentioned, people is comparing themselves to others. Young kids now, they want to be rich at 19. I think there are many lines of the reality that social media, not because it's the cause, it's because we have access to many info, and people is posting fake info and fake stories that doesn't exist that make people believe in their houses, young kids, that that's the reality. I remember when summer jobs were important. I don't think summer jobs is important anymore for young or for some young people. It's kind of strange. Number
Yeah, bagging
two,
groceries.
correct. And
delivering the
number two,
newspaper.
I remember also when people talk about $1 million, for instance, and it was a lot of money, and they understand that behind the money is also value, hard work, discipline, a project, an idea, or something like that. Now, the videos and everything makes it look like it's nothing, and you have to have it now. So that kind of anxiousness, the ansiedad that creates all of that to young generations and people, I guess is leading towards some folks to radicalize in many topics. But I think the biggest problem is family. Family is the first contact that human
agree.
beings have with society. And if you have young parents that instead of giving time to the children at home and creating discipline at home, they just give a tablet or a cell phone just to not pay attention. So the person is getting the first education through this thing. And this thing is a lot of lies out there.
Jen,
And
I
they
have
don't
to-
know.
Yeah.
I have the same question for you.
Yeah.
What do you kind of see as like the problem here and the solutions?
So I do think myself a little bit more of a sociologist, just because in my field, you deal with people for so long. I think that this generation is in a very weird spot. We're in a place that we've never seen in the history before, when it comes to relations between men and women, especially, and the concept of family. So, and it's a perfect mix of BS, honestly. If we could all probably think back to the generation of our grandparents, right? That was probably the last generation where women were seen as homemakers and nothing more, right? They could afford a house. The one man working can afford a house and can take care of a family of four, right? The generation previous to us, my parents' generation, already for the first time, we were seeing that just one person working, it's very difficult to make ends meet. So just 2 generations ago, what I'm trying to say, we had a stronger basis for the family unit. Affordability allowed for people to build out the American dream, to have healthy social relations with each other. In the previous generation, unfortunately, we started already seeing women in the workplace, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, obviously, but it has come from a point of necessity, right? And we have a generation, my generation, that grew up in a household where probably both parents worked. So mom worked, dad worked, but since previously in history, women also took on the roles of homemakers and the caregivers of children. They grew up with moms who did it all. They worked the 9 to 5 and then they worked the 5 to 9. And that's why our mothers are so crazy. God bless them. They worked their butts off. And I think that's the first generation really for that to happen. And so we have this generation right now that has very interesting expectations of the other sex. I think that men grew up in a generation of moms that did it all. They were super women. Like, yeah, my mom did it all. She went to work. She took care of the kids. She took care of the household. Why can't you do it? And women, the girls that grew up in that generation saw mom and dad and saw mom going to work, coming home, taking care of the household. They saw her exhausted and they're like, I saw my mom do that. That's not going to be me. So we are now at an odds. And the way to fix this is by having conversations and finally realizing the value that each person apports to a relationship, the value that men bring into a relationship, the true value that women have brought into a relationship, and in creating that family. In previous years, prior to our grandparents' generations, women really didn't have, one, probably the necessity to work, or two, also the opportunity to work. So they were pretty dependent on getting married to be able to have a family and afford life. Now that men and women have the same options, now we have to choose to come together. It's not out of necessity. So the standards are different. Women they don't necessarily need a provider anymore. It's the truth. It's not that I'm saying we don't need men in society. Of course we do, and of course, we respect them for that. It's the fact that women don't necessarily need men as providers, and the only way they're adding somebody to their life is if they give things outside of material things, emotional intelligence, care, respect, actual love, and exactly, and companionship. And so those are the conversations that need to happen. And I think that's what's going to heal this country. I think that's what's going to heal this loneliness epidemic for women and for men, for young men especially, because unfortunately, what happens when young men are lonely, men don't normally talk to each other, don't have as close social bonds as women do. So they'll turn to the internet and they'll turn to other young, frustrated men on there spewing hate, spewing their frustrations, but not having true, deep, intimate conversations because there's a social stigma behind having true conversations and saying, no, I feel sad that like I'm lonely, instead of saying I'm so mad that I'm lonely and it's women's fault that they're so picky nowadays. I think absolutely that's driving that. And
I think that's a conversation we're gonna have to continue to have as society on this entire conversation as families, as individuals. Where are we as a society? Where are we heading? What are the impacts that will have moving forward?
That's what would fix society for sure, is the return of the family unit. But to get to that point, a lot of conversations need to be had.
Conversations, many of them difficult, but important to have. I do want to turn to our last segment where we're going to focus on a new poll from a liberal, left-leaning organization that is indicating that the president, the administration might be slowing down on their numbers when it comes to support to the Latino community. As we know, Latinos really helped the president in the 2024 election, and Republicans win the White House, win the Senate, win the House of Representatives. This means that they are a key voting bloc next year in 2026 when it comes to being able to keep majorities both in the House and in the Senate. Cesar, I want to start with you. The Hispanic community is one of the focus areas that you have and your organization has with your podcast as well. The stats coming in from this poll, again, left-leaning organization, they're saying that there's a shift of 13 points away from the president. These numbers are actually better than what previous Republican presidents many times have done, or candidates have done. So the president's still keeping a record, but it is a move on the negative from where he was previously. In your opinion, one, why are we seeing a little bit of this shift? And then what do Republicans kind of have to do to make sure that they can continue moving forward with Latinos, not backwards?
Well, first of all, the poll is interesting because sometimes we give numbers with the polls, which is the whole picture of the poll. But it's interesting to really know what topics are maybe contributing to that kind of numbers. But I will say this: last year in the presidential election, one of the topics that actually Latinos voted for President Trump was security at the border. They want to feel safe in our country. I had conversations with people, even undocumented people, Latinos, and they were worried about what was happening during the previous administration with the open borders. So in that angle, I know there's a lot of Latinos that actually are happy with the feel that they have now, that the country is back on track on safety. Yes, there are many things that the administration can continue improving, like the economy, but it's also normal to understand that at this point of the recording of this show, President is 6-7 months in, so it's just starting the presidency. I don't think it's fair to judge or to ask for immediate shift in a topic that is so specific,
a lot of things from
which is the economy,
administration.
because the economy, macroeconomy, has many moving parts. He's trying to fix that. But I think in the long term, which is the rest of the presidency, I'm confident that we will see improving the numbers there. So we will see even going back or doing better numbers for President Trump at the end of his presidency with the Latino community. And the reason why is because what this administration offered during the previous election resonated with the community, not because the party per se, and I think the party should capitalize on that, but because it was common sense. And common sense is economy, safety, and people wanted that. Latinos wanted that. We left behind our countries of origin because we didn't have those opportunities, because we didn't feel safe in the country of origin. And this administration is offering that. And if Republicans can continue with that promise of bringing opportunity, better economy, safety, or safer cities and places, I'm pretty sure Latinos will, or Hispanics will connect with that agenda regardless of the candidate visit for Senate or for House or even the next presidency, which is also important. Remember that in 4 years, there's going to be a new presidential coming election, and it will be more candidates. And I think it will be important for those candidates to pay attention to those topics that really care about. So going back to the poll, I believe it's important to see it, but I don't think that the administration of Republicans should feel worried about the numbers. On the contrary, you said, I think the shift, it's kind of the normal, but it will be better in the long term.
What should continue? What should be the message of Republicans? A lot of the issues that are left for the rest of the year aren't considered like your sexy issues, right? At the end of September, you have the possibility of a government shutdown, right? They need to see if they continue, on the budget. But then the budget, there's also brings up the conversation of spending, which takes us to the conversation of the national debt. These aren't like your kitchen table issues, but they're going to be front and center in Congress. And then come January, it's kind of election season, right? So what's the message you believe conservatives, politicians should be having to Latinos specifically at this time?
Yeah, so I would definitely take that poll with a grain of salt just because of the source it comes from. It's a little bit more left-leaning.
which means many times that how they phrase the questions, the people that they poll could be slanted.
So that can definitely skew the numbers, but I think that the left has done the best job at pushing Latinos to the right because of their cultural beliefs and their insane policies and politics, especially when it comes to pushing the transgender agenda on children. And Latinos, we are very socially conservative. We are very family-oriented. The left hates or has apparently declared war on religion, on God, and on family. And these are all just basic things to Latino households. I think that they are the best marketers for the Republican Party. And all we have to do is continue what we've been doing, which is keeping on with the promise of keeping the country safe, stopping the flow of drugs into our country, which we've seen happen, making sure our borders are safe, getting the economy back on track. And then all we have to do is highlight the insanity of the left, pushing for children to be mutilated, pushing for children to take drugs that delay or completely stop them from going through puberty. I think that we need to highlight what they want for our kids and our families, and that is all the marketing that we need to do. This or that. You choose what you want this country to look like, what this future can look like.
I think that's spot on in the sense that the left has isolated Latinos for so many years. I think they took them for granted. They promised many things on immigration reform, never pushed forward. And then they're pushing other candidates that have the same policies. What do you say of that, Cesar?
I'm going to give you a poll that actually is more important than this poll, and is that inside the Democratic Party, the popularity of Democratic Party inside Democratic voters is like 23%. So even Democrats are really they don't see a leadership there. They lack of leadership. The lack of agenda is pushing people out of that party towards common sense. And I remember a meme that Governor Ron DeSantis shared, and this is in line with what you just said a few days ago, that the realtor of the year for Florida is actually Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and Mondani in New York, because people is running away from that crazy agenda that it already failed in so many countries. So they don't have anything to offer. So again, I don't think the conservatives are in a bad place now with Latinos or Hispanics, I think it always common sense will be something that our community really is looking for.
And we're a sophisticated voting bloc. Latinos pay attention to the issues. They pay attention to what folks say. I think something that both parties have to remember is not taking our vote for granted. Again, as a sophisticated voting bloc, we do want to be courted. We do want to hear people's message and opinions on the issues. This is a topic that we're going to continue to cover here on The Game. I want to thank Driana and Cesar for joining us today. Thank you both for your analysis. This has been The Game, the show where we go play by play, analyzing the game of politics.